Yeah. Hi, so I'm Emily Hughes of Finding Flow Parenting. I am a conscious parenting coach, and I'm here today with
Maria Leon. I am also a conscious parenting coach of Illuminate Parenting.
and we're going to be talking about the topic of catastrophizing. And the title of this talk is From Catastrophizing to Trusting. So I think the reason why we brought this up was because it's a topic that comes up a lot in our roles as parenting coaches, i.e., people come to see us because they're stuck in catastrophizing. So what does it mean to you, Maria? What does that word catastrophizing bring up?
Um, for me, it means a sign that I'm living in my head. Um,
Mm,
and that's basically the opposite of living in your heart, trusting, um, the process, the journey that you're on, and that you'll figure it out. You'll find the people and the tools to help you. So yeah, catastrophizing for me is like I'm living from here up.
yeah. And
And
I think for me, it's like I'm living like in the future as well, like from here up, but also it's like a disembodied head in the future. I'm thinking like Futurama, where they've got the heads in the jars in the future. That's where I'm at.
yep.
So, and I think why it's living in the future is because it's really when you're catastrophizing, it's like you're unable to be present because you're constantly sort of fortune telling what might happen in the future and
Yeah.
it's in a kind of really high stakes fear-based way as
Hmm.
well. And I think one of the things about catastrophizing though is I think that everybody does it, or at least most people do it. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's how much we get lost in it that can
Hmm.
be a problem, because sometimes a bit of catastrophizing can serve us because it helps us to sort of see what might happen in the future. But I think where it might not be serving us is in when we get lost in it. And I'm doing this for getting lost in it because it
You're
kind
on
of
a
feels like
hamster
that for
wheel
me.
there.
Yeah.
Right. It's sort of like a maladaptive behavior. Like, it can be helpful, as you said, for viewing what might happen and what steps we might want to take and what kind of interventions we might want to have. But it also does keep us kind of stuck in our little box and very focused on the end point and not on the process.
Mm.
So, it definitely is like a little trauma response to fear.
Mm.
So, so what is something that you've catastrophized about? Can you think
Yeah,
of anything?
yeah. Well, something that we so Maria and I coach each other from time to time, because I think it's we're both parent coaches, but we also are drawn to this work because we both need parent coaching as well. I speak for myself, but
Nope.
yeah, and I one of the a couple of years ago I came and I was speaking to Maria about how my eldest son was hitting quite a lot. And, looking at it in my logical brain, it was kind of age appropriate behavior, but I was catastrophizing hard about it. Not in and this is the thing, it's like catastrophizing is not logical. It's, you start sort of obsessing and worrying about quite daft narratives. Um,
Mhm.
and I think this is why coming to see a coach is so useful, because what can happen is just even articulating some of these things out loud
Mhm.
can help you to see that they're actually
Right.
it's sort of like you don't get lost in them, because when you voice them sometimes you're
Mhm.
kind of like, oh well, that's kind of a silly thing to think. But if you don't voice it out loud, it can get really stuck. And if you
Yeah.
don't, it can stay in that kind of like unconscious swirling loop.
Hmm. So if somebody, had a scenario they were catastrophizing about, one of our viewers, and they didn't yet feel like I'm gonna see a coach, right? One thing I would recommend doing on your own is getting a piece of paper out, blank paper, line paper, doesn't matter, and write out, the scenario. So the scenario for you, as I remember, was my child is hitting and they're going to grow up to be, a bad person. They're going to be violent. They might end up in prison. Like these so far out ideas. But, it's it's a little self-check. When you write it all down, you can see, okay, here's what I'm believing about the situation or my child. And then you can kind of branch off. How's it making me feel when I'm believing this, and write down the emotions, but just fill the page, however much is there. I call it the tunnel event. So this is your chance to just let all those gremlins talk. And then after that, you can kind of see, okay, maybe these, maybe this is, I can see it for what it is. Like I can see my worry, I can see my concern. Like you're really afraid that this might happen or that might happen. It's like validate and witness yourself and not be as stuck with the thoughts. And then afterward, with that paper, you can keep it, or you can put it in your wood stove or burn it or bury it, just as a way to kind of end that worry zone.
And I feel like you can also use it as a tool to see, where can I take tangible action?
Yeah.
And where can I not? Because, so for example, like with the hitting, what really kind of like changed for me was actually in my response to his hitting. Once I started to actually stop catastrophizing so much, I was able to, in the hitting, just respond much more calmly. And in me doing that, like things dissipated actually quite quickly. And I think this is the thing. Sometimes there is gold to be found in catastrophizing. It's just gold amidst a sort of muddy landslide of things that also aren't serving you.
Yeah.
And I think being able to sort of do that tunnel event and look at it in a really clear-eyed way. And I think that thing, because catastrophizing often has this sort of swirling quality to it, where we can end up feeling like quite lost and quite activated in our nervous systems. Being able to put it down on a piece of paper or speak to somebody else about it gives you that layer of separation, so you can look at it from a step back and be like, what is the wisdom to be gleaned from looking at this catastrophizing? And I think if we bring in that word, so we called this from catastrophic, I found that word hard to say, catastrophizing to trusting. I think, what does that word bring up for you, the trusting part?
Definitely like a grounded feeling, like I have the tools and capacity to deal with my own emotional responses and or whatever behaviors coming up. And I think like in the end, the catastrophizing is actually telling you something about you. Like not even your child's behavior can be interpreted so many different ways by so many different people that indicate what kind of needs they might have that are not being met. But at the end of the day, it's like, ooh, this is something not resolved in me. Like, for example, last winter, I really had a difficult time with all of the kids' sickness, and my daughter developed some asthma-like symptoms, which I had as a child, and I went down all kinds of tunnels and catastrophized about this quite a lot. And that really pointed me in the direction of like, oh, I have some unresolved trauma in my own life about this. And like I went and, I saw that and got the steps and saw somebody, a somatic coach to work with me on that. So, now she sometimes has similar symptoms, and I don't just don't do to the level of that. So like looking for what's the nugget, like what's it telling me about me, which is not such a fun thing to do sometimes, but
Yeah.
useful.
It takes a lot of courage, I think, to look at
Yeah.
look at that catastrophizing and look at it for the things that are unhealed within us. And I also think because I think sort of your children's health is a big area where people catastrophize. And in a way, I think there's almost like catastrophizing in a way can be almost like a belief in magic. And let me follow through on this. It's almost like if I can picture the very worst scenario happening, then I will keep myself safe from it not happening. And so many of us do this, and it's interesting when we look at it within um, that lens of like magic. And it's a way of us trying to feel like we have some control
Right.
over situations where we have very little control.
Right.
And yeah, I had this family with my son in like June or July, or really for quite a long time. He had glandular fever. It was like mono in US. And it just went on and on and on. And then he basically had tonsillitis followed by glandular fever. But at the time we didn't know that's what was going on. And he was just ill for so long. And then obviously you go down the rabbit hole, and really why you're going down the rabbit hole is because you don't want to be complacent.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that the energy that is involved in going down that rabbit hole and spiraling in that rabbit hole is not really serving you or your child.
Right.
It it's you know, and my husband does not catastrophize in any way as much as I do. He's like, why are you doing that? Why are you going there? Like, can't we just look at this like for what it is in a logical, like, it's just like, no, we can't. And I think really it is a sort of like belief that like I need to stay alert. So
Mm-hmm.
catastrophizing is keeping me in that alertness, which is
Yeah.
going to keep bad stuff from happening. But
Right.
ultimately, it doesn't serve me, and it wasn't serving my child either, because I was just kind of like quite stuck in
Mm-hmm.
like high alert mode. And what I really needed in that time, and eventually God, was soothing. And I think uh, I'm obsessed with this word lately, soothing. It's like coming into all of my coaching sessions with clients, because I think that this is what so many of us need. And I think when people are lost in that catastrophizing spiral, often what they need is soothing. That
Mm-hmm.
it's safe to come down from this high activation and like be be soothed. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think about that? Like, what are some ways in which
Mm-hmm.
people or yourself, what can we find that soothing, you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great word, and really gets to the like need at the bottom of the catastrophizing, like as an intervention. I
Mm.
think you can do this simple thing, like it's called like, well, I call it the arm squeeze, where you put your right hand under your left armpit and then you hug yourself, the left
Mm.
arm.
I'm doing it the wrong way around.
Yeah, it could be either way. And just that pressure can feel really good.
Mm.
Um, so that's one. Another one, to like bring yourself out of that mindset, which is about this big. Like I can't see anything. Uh, is you hold your breath, you think of the scenario, and you hold your breath and you count backward from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So when on the exhale, you say to yourself, what if it all works out? What if it all works out? It's like, let's introduce this bigger mindset that's not about like just right now.
Mm.
And that can sound kind of like Pollyanna to some people, but I would suggest that try it. Um, and it doesn't mean like you're not going to take X, Y, or you don't need to take actions. It doesn't mean you don't need to take actions. It doesn't mean this scenario doesn't require you to do nothing. No, you can have certain action steps that are actually going to be helpful. Like maybe it's contacting a teacher or a therapist or doing more self-care or talking with your child,
Mm.
but it just opens up like, oh, maybe things will be fine.
Yeah.
Like in the bigger sense of it. And that's the trusting piece.
Yeah. And I think within that, like there's a thing around like narrative and the narratives that we create around our children. And it's like people can get, or around ourselves, people can get stuck in a storyline that actually is just that. It's a storyline. And I feel like that
Yeah.
thing of like, whatever all works out is an invitation to change the story. Or maybe that's not quite right for you, but to even like see that another storyline is possible
Yeah.
can be kind of a nice tool to get unstuck from that.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
that, like you said, catastrophizing can feel a bit like you've got like the blinkers on and like it's just like a tunnel.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, just thinking of any other soothing things. So it's a useful exercise to for yourself, and it's something we do with clients is like, what are your soothing, like let's make a list. Let's make an actual list you can put on your fridge. And
Yeah,
it's not like because we're coaches, we're so good at this. It means
yeah,
like, no, because we're coaches, we're always trying, it means we really need it and we're always learning
yeah,
about different ways that people are soothed. Like some people are overstimulated in their auditory system, some people get visual overstimulation. So like different things are going to help different people. But
yeah. And I
yeah,
think something you touched upon there, and I had a question similar to this from a client earlier today, is like, how do you get to the point where you're not like on a hair trigger all the time? And I think sometimes people are like looking for this sort of like um sort of golden bullet like is that the phrase, anyway, like this thing that's going to be like suddenly like snap, I trust myself and like I'm feeling like grounded and centered. And actually no, it's a daily process. I think it's a daily process of soothing in order to get to that point of trust. And I think sometimes people need a little bit of help with that, which is why someone might seek a parenting coach,
yeah,
because sometimes it's hard, especially when people are busy and overstimulated. Sometimes it's hard to carve out that that spaciousness to be able to prioritize yourself and find access to tools that are going to soothe you and resource you. That's another
mhm,
word I'm always banging on about. It's like resourcing, like what resources you.
yeah.
And
And it
I
takes
think,
practice over
yeah,
time to see,
yeah,
oh, that worked. Oh, that did not, this did not, appeal to me, and you'll just learn over time what is going to help you or your child. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's a nice note to end on then.
Yeah.
Practice, and I like the word nudging, like nudging every day, like nudging
Yep.
towards safety and nudging towards being soothed, and nudging towards having like a spacious relationship with
Mhm.
catastrophizing. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, great. And if anyone wants to find out how to work with us more, you can find me at we'll put them in underneath, but I am at on social media at Finding Flow Parenting, and I'll put my website link down below. And Maria, how can people find you?
Yep. I'm at illuminateparenting.com, and also same thing at Instagram. And so yeah, we'll put some resources in the down below. Thanks
Great.
everybody. Good
Cool.
luck.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.